Let's get started. So my name is Jacob Mathews. I'm with EV Consulting, and before doing this, I was at Ford Motor Company for over 33 years. I retired last year, and so I'm really happy to be engaged in doing this consulting work. Anyway, so you can see the panelists here, and they will introduce themselves here shortly. But in the interest of time, we'll just get going. So as we talk about PKI, our theme for today is talking about the technical solutions that can enable interoperability with PKI routes. So as we talked about earlier, and as you already know, we have multiple routes that may be evolving. And so then what is the solution set for that? You know, is it certificate trustless? Is it cross-certification? What are the different methods? We'll touch upon that. And of course, the session also wants to discuss some of the best practices from mature industries. And I'll touch upon that first, and then we'll get into the first bullet point in that order. So talk about digital trust. And to me, digital trust is the cornerstone of securing interoperability in a connected world, right? When you think about all the interactions that you have today from your IoT devices, from your phone, from your laptops, all that is built around digital trust. I got this infographic from online, and here is, for example, the aviation industry. They have communication that occurs between the plane when it's on the ground, when it's up in the air, with the baggage handling system, with all of that, and then it's all done by ensuring that there is trust and data that is communicated between the different parts of that ecosystem, right? Similarly, you can look at that in a hospital setting. So all the monitoring devices, the medical data that is being communicated between computers, between back-end infrastructure, all happening in a secure method. And then similarly, other ecosystems, with transit, we can look at the train system that exists, the signaling and locating of the trains and so forth in terms of transporting goods. All that happens again. And of course, your home. I touched upon that. All your different devices at home, your IoT devices, your cameras, your Ring doorbells, and what have you. The basic idea being is that each entity, each communicating device has to be recognized and authenticated. And so same thing for the automotive industry, right? So we're only talking about one segment of where autos will connect, and that is right now in charging. But do you foresee a future where autos will be talking to other infrastructure or even vehicle to vehicle? We talk about DSRC as one of the communication standards that was being developed and talked about a while back. But how do you make sure that the device that you're talking to is that device? And in defining all that, you go back to having digital trust. And that is not just the PKI, but also the overarching umbrella for the PKI, which is, how do you establish rules, and how do you establish governance, how do you authenticate each of the entities? And that's the basis of digital trust. So then drilling down, what is a PKI? Simply put, it's a system of processes, technologies, and policies that allows you to encrypt and or sign data. You can issue certificates, authenticate the identity of users, devices, and services. And then where is it used? As we talked about, every place we touched upon today, securing your web page. And I'll give a quick example of that in just a minute. Encrypting your files, authenticating emails, authenticating your VPN connection, establishing a TLS communication. All those places the PKI is used. It's seamless, but it's what allows us to securely communicate. And let me go to the next slide here. So here's a comparison. I wanted to just throw this out there really quickly. And Mark already talked about it in quite a bit of detail, so I don't want to take too much more time on that. But you can see, for example, in the top example, the browser, you want to connect to your banking website. Your browser sends a request to gain the access on the server certificate. And once a server sends that certificate back, your browser makes sure that that is an authenticated certificate. It checks it into the root CA. Once it identifies that, then it uses that information to encrypt, and then that's how the two communicate from that point on, right? And there's a similar setup for the EV, and Mark discussed that earlier. So just drawing the parallels of how PKI is being used not only in the real world as an example, but also in the EV. And there are things that we can learn, that we should learn, and bring it forward as we get into this whole conversation about PKI and the governance and just setting up a structure for securing identities versus charging communication messaging. All right, so with that, I guess let me give this over to Michael Keller. He is going to come and discuss a bit more detail about PKI and ISO 15008. So, Michael?
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. I would like to show here some slides in regards of what we from Charing and the project team we had in the Euro PKI activities being done. And just to give a basis, we have seen different slides like that before. So we need the keys in the different partners of the interaction for the contracts and for the authentication. And they have to come from a trusted V2G root out of the PKI. That's what you can see on the left side, and then they have brought to the different partners of the data interaction. And we did that in Charing for the community. So there was a request coming to Charing that we need to have a system where also the companies who were not trusting an existing V2G root want to go into the PKI and the capability also to have the plug and charge service available for their customer and in their products. And that it came out okay. Then during the discussion, the decision by the team was made with the companies who did that project that they want to have an own V2G root with an own PKI, because that would give the neutrality and the ability to onboard all the different companies who are interested and which had not the trust so far in the market. But during the project, it came out that defining a V2G root and the PKI, that's something, like also Jacob mentioned, is not new, so that's somehow available, how to do that. But the most important thing was that the related activities have to be aligned, because you want to have that everyone is trusting this V2G root and the PKI. So that means the first part is we have to agree, and that's clear, I think, for everyone here, that we have a common standard, which is a base for all that. But the more important thing, what we learned, is that we need to have common understanding and definition of what are the market guidelines, how to interact between these players, and also what is the certificate policy, so that everyone can agree on by defining these policies to be able to trust this route, and also need the governance around it. And then it took that most of the time, we have just put the graph on the right-hand side just to illustrate how much work at the end has to put into that. But based now on having these guidelines, certificate policy, and the governance being done, it's now easy to issue then based on that a V2G root and the PKI for that. So I think that's one of the key learnings what we put first on that here. The second one is as more we are coordinating and more companies and more partners are integrated in the discussion, and that's why we formed not a Charing internal project. It was an open project for everyone in the community and everyone who wants to join and to support that, as more trusted and as more as acceptance of this what's coming out. Yeah, that's not only regarding the V2G root and PKI, but that's also mainly regarding the governance, CP, and the market guidelines. So that is the second learning. So we have to consider also all different types of parts of the chain of the data flow to be able to have that being in a high level of acceptance. Number three is if there are guidelines being aligned and everyone is basing on that, that's increasing also the capability of being interoperable and giving then the basis that even if there are different V2G routes and different PKIs in the market, that they are able to interact and to be interoperable and be trusted to each other. So that means that all the different issuer of these should, as good as possible, to align with that. And so we have a set of minimum requirements, minimum criteria everyone is following in the market. That's also helping. Yeah. So, and the learning number 4 is, beside having the PKI, you also need, if you have then different sources for the certificates, you need to have an ecosystem where also the certificate pools are located in. And to be able to then interact between these and to exchange these certificates, you need the API interface. And that was the next part where we see, okay, this is something what needs to be done and needs to be also standardized. And before we go to a standardization body, so the same procedure like we have also done with MCS, that we have also in support also of the existing group who has done the API before, have now a working group in Sharon, which is globally from the beginning on in a way that we are now taking over what is existing, proving what has to be done to make it better or to be aligned to the needs of the demand of the market and of the different market players, to then have also the basis for potential API standard, what we call OPNC. And that's also what I'm saying here, is not something what is done, that's something what is still ongoing. And I would also invite here everyone also from the industry who is interested to support that, to support this interoperability also for this interface between the different ecosystems, the different pools, to be support and be potentially also part if that is helping, and to be helping to bring that on the appropriate acceptance level on a global base. Yeah, that's from my side. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. So, hi, I'm Steffen, I'm from Hubject, and I'm happy to share a little bit from our experience. So, Hubject is operating plug-in charge since 2019, productive in Europe, but also in the US with Electrify America, the EVgo and other ones. And the plug-in charger sounds easy, right? It's like you plug and charge, and it's easy to explain from the customer level, but it's really complicated, as we mentioned in the panel before, because certain things are coming together. PKIs, ecosystems, maybe also related roaming and so on. So there's not the solution for something, so we need to cut this into pieces. The elephant needs to be cut down. So I want to talk a little bit about the different things we need to tackle. One is V2G PKIs. Michael just explained. It's really important that there are routes available. How is it going to work together? Because it's important to get the TLS handshake between the EV and EVC. It's really a low level. It needs to be there. Secondly, the V2G is also used for installing a contract, because the car cannot trust any MSP. Because in Europe we have about 1,000 MSP CPOs connected to our roaming platform. How can there be a trust? It needs to be over a common entity like a root CA or so. Then we need to talk about how can we make sure that interop between or for PKIs are available. Because PKIs usually don't have a trust between each other. It's possible, but it's a little bit more complicated. But end entities need to trust it. Jacob said it before. All our phones, our laptops, they trust hundreds of routes. We don't know about it, but it's there. So this is one thing we need to discuss. And then in the plug-in charge world, there are certain certificates. Charging stations get certificates, contracts get certificates, and cars as well. And everyone can actually run their own PKI, except the CPO. We'll come to this, or Michael already showed it. And they are running independently of the V2G PKI. So an OEM can run their own certificates, they're independent, MSP can run their own certificates, but at the end they need to trust some V2Gs in the market. Michael also said there need to be ecosystems. PKI is just offering you certificates, but how do you exchange them? Via email? No, you need to have APIs, you need to have pools where you store them. And so now we are a subject, we are running one system, and as soon as the second one pops up, we need to clarify how the data are getting exchanged or how we share the data to allow interop. Because it's not an option that a player which is doing today plug and charge or is exchanging data needs to connect to all the other systems. This is not acceptable. Then we have a little bit chaos like roaming in Europe, which took a little bit time to get settled. And the last but not least is multi-contract handling, which is, you already said it, Mark. It's already possible, it's available. We can also show this tomorrow with the BMW. It's really not a thing, we just have to talk how an OEM is implementing it and how an MSP or CPO is dealing with it. So in the slide is a lot of small things, but for PKI interop, there are two common things which were also in the title of the whole thing. One is cross-recognition, means an end entity is trusting a lot of PKIs. Right? So you cross-recognize a lot of PKIs. It's a common standard in the IT, and I believe, or we believe, this will be the normal thing for vehicles as well. Cars need to install multiple root CAs. It's 800 bytes in a -2, a little bit more in a -20. So the effort is limited. And the ISO is already saying today, the -2, please be ready to install at least 5, right? So do better a little bit more. And the roots is a question, where do you get them? Either you go to the market and you read every certificate policy. Okay, it's a fun part. It's not, it's really boring. Or you go to a root certificate pool like we are operating it because we have a certain set of roots when a root is coming to our root pool. Or there's a CTL available, a certificate trust list. It's actually a text list which is signed by a body above. So then we need to align who is signing this list. So it's the thing. Cross-signing came up in -20, it's mentioned, in a -2 it's not mentioned, and that's a problem. That means if we want to do cross-signing in a -2, we probably face problems in interop, because the chargers are not ready. They need to store cross certificates in their memory, which they are not doing today. So I would say we shouldn't foster more interop issues today with the -2, enforcing the CPOs and EVCs to do something, instead of giving the OEM kind of the task to install some routes. I mentioned the MO and OEM, they can just develop the PKI, they run it, and they need to share the data with ecosystems. And this is the lower part. What happens if multiple ecosystems would exist? If they don't work together, we have a problem, right? So the OEM, BMW is connected to the system of Optic, and there's a new system. How does the MSP from the other system get the contract from BMW? Actually not possible. So I don't think this is good. We have a bad customer experience. Second thing is the systems need to be connected. We made a showcase last year with ELAT, with Vedecom and French guys, and we used the protocol OPCP, which is the baseline what we have today, which is now getting transferred to OPNC and Charin, and we showed that the systems can share data on request. So an MSP from the system A can create a contract for a car in system B, and the contract can be installed somehow. And the protocol defines this quite well. There's a third option, which is a broker in between, but the broker is again a problem. Who is a broker? Who is a trusted broker who can get all the data and who is transferring them? So can be done, but maybe politically a little bit complicated. And the last thing was, because I get this from the market barely, there are some OEMs thinking, I will operate my own PCP, like where I store my vehicle certificates inside, and I don't want to share it with someone. It's possible, you can do it. You need to share the data as well later as well. But the MSPs have a problem to create a contract for your car, so that you lock yourself down if you do this. Okay, the one slide is gone, which I actually had, but to take it on the baseline, we need to have common rules and guidelines how PKIs and ecosystems work together. PKIs should work independently of each other, so should run independently, and the ecosystems can decide which PKIs they want to use. So we as Object, we are today using our PKI because we set it up, but if a new PKI pops up, in Europe we have now Charin, we're going to integrate them into our system so that we avoid any interop problems. That the Charin PKI can be used in the field because you don't have an ecosystem, it's a hard work to get all the customers onboarded. It's maybe not for everyone, the thing, but running a PKI is a completely different business. So the ecosystems need to be forced to work together. So if a new one is coming, Hubject wants to be forced to work with the other system, and this system needs to be forced to work with us to share data, to avoid interop issues in the market. And then on a layer above, the stakeholders, the OEMs, CPOs, and MSPs, they decide for one system to connect. They can check out which system is using which PKI, but the PKIs will be there, and it's like the systems will provide as much as possible if they want to be good. And on the upper part, there are the cars. They want to charge at any charging station. So vehicles, please, or OEMs, please install as many root CAs, V2G root CAs as possible into the car. And then you're ready. TLS is working. You can install any contract because you don't need to know the MSP. And the EVCs needs to install all mobility operator routes and V2Gs. And then we have the whole thing working. Plug and charge is then there, and we don't need to tackle the interop issues which we might have.
Thank you, Stefan. I just want to reach out to the panelists and see if they want to make any other opening comments. Jeremy, I know you wanted to say something. Come on over here.
I'm going to use the podium in case you don't like these comments and I need to get a running start out the door. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit today, well, for one, and I don't mean to direct this exactly at you, is that I really do not like the idea that, oh, it's like a web browser. We have a fundamental problem here is that not all the EVCCs can be updated super easily like a browser can be. Thank you. So that's one of our major issues today is that when EA talked about it in one of our previous panels is that I have to do a bunch of workarounds for cars in the market today. You know, we're going to have this great, interop event tomorrow, but I'm not seeing like 2017, 2018 vehicles there. I'm seeing, the newest stuff and the latest stuff. And that's a huge problem is that, I have to deal with all of these old vehicles and still today, I have to do a bunch of workarounds for that. So with a web browser, you can update it. It updates every couple of weeks. It's sometimes in the background. You don't even think about it. It's easy. We don't have that reality today. There's some automakers that are truly struggling with remote over-the-air updates. Not going to call anybody out, but if you follow the news, there's one of them that said basically we can't do it. But there's other automakers that are very aggressive on this and fantastic. They can do updates all over the air. And yeah, they can say like, oh, ours is like a web browser. We can update it. The other problem with comparing it to a web browser is that fundamentally this is an embedded electronics environment. So it's not, they're talking about kilobytes of space for the certificates. It's not necessarily that, but the processing power is up there and the complexity that you're putting into basically something slightly bigger than a microcontroller in a lot of cases is really, it's a lot. This is a really complex protocol and it's really heavy. So you've got a whole stack, it's like an onion. You've got PLC, which is not used elsewhere outside this industry. You've got EXI, which is not used outside this industry. You've got all these specific things that you have for these namespaces and everything. We're not reusing anything here other than TLS. So we have to build up our own industry knowledge. When I bring on people into our staff, it's 6 to 9 months to come up to speed on CCS as a communication protocol. That's kind of insane. At the end of the day, at least for DC fast charging, you're asking for a current and I'm delivering it and telling you what my parameters are, you tell me what my parameters are. That's what it is at the end of the day, right? Charging fundamentally DC fast charging a vehicle, that's what it is. Well, it turns out there is a company that's doing this, and they're doing fast charging amazingly well, and they're doing plug-in charge without PKI at all. It's called Tesla. Tesla sold 161,000 vehicles in Q1. That is an order of magnitude more than anybody else, and at that rate, they're putting together a huge network that has charging all over the United States, all over the world. And if you look online right now, people reviewing different vehicles or even plug share scores or plug share comments is if you want to do road tripping in the United States right now, you get a Tesla. So there's something wrong here with the way we're doing CCS. If that somebody else in the market, basically our competition for this is that you have a different network, somebody else that has got a closed ecosystem, less variables to deal with, and is able to succeed in that way. And the customer's like, I'm going for that. I'm going to buy that. So at the end of the day, really, we should not be trying to do so much infighting, because we have bigger competition than ourselves that's doing it better today with vehicles in the market today. So we really need to take this seriously and actually pull our egos out of our butts and actually do this right. So, sorry. And again, with the complex chain here, Tesla's chain is, charging essentially is a complex chain. You've got all these different problems that can come up between power electronics, between the connector, between slack not working right, all that sort of thing. Tesla's chain is significantly shorter and likely stronger. Adding plug-in charge really is adding at least 2 links to the chain, the TLS and then the certificate contract. And adding links to a chain doesn't strengthen the other links. So when we do this sort of thing, when we're doing plug-in charge, I know plug-in charge is required, we're gonna do it, EVgo's gonna do it, but we really need to think about like, hey, we have to do it perfectly from day one, because the second I turn on TLS on my chargers, I have to be doing it right from day one, because there's vehicles in the market today that are expecting a Hubject leaf cert in my charger. And if we have other PKIs in the market, I need to go and run to install those as soon as possible, at least unless we do cross-signing and all that other stuff. There's really some of this fundamentals with this protocol that just, hey, TLS is set up literally first. If it fails, there's nothing in the standard that says like this is what you do to fall back to TCP. Everybody's just figured out a way to do that on their own, inconsistently. So at least we're trying to make sure that we can do that, doing seamless retry and all that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do on the charger network side, the CPO side, is fundamentally harder than what Tesla is doing. And Tesla is doing this very, very well. So if we're going to actually do what is needed, which basically the market has decided needs to be, whether it's NEVI or not, doesn't matter. People are going to buy the other cars that actually can go across the country if that's what they truly want to do. So we have to do this better, fundamentally, in order for us to succeed. EVs are going to succeed. It's just a percentage of the market. How much percentage of the market is Tesla going to take from us and keep and maintain from us versus the rest of us? Because right now it's over 60% Tesla. So it's up to everybody in this room. There's some very smart people in this room. And I loved the stuff that we had yesterday with the PKI working group. That last 15 minutes of sort of yelling passionately back and forth. We need more of that, because we need to figure out this stuff. It's not always about working groups. It's not always about that, oh, well, we'll put together some discussion stuff. It's literally sitting us all in a room together and figuring it out so it works the first time, because that's really what we need. Last thing, got a whole bunch of different notes in here, but we're stuck with DIN forever, Mark, so just kind of live with that, because we really truly do. There's vehicles in the market that only do DIN 7 and 121, and that's it. So as a charging network provider, I'm going to have to do DIN essentially forever, unless we actually get those cars updated to ISO, so I want to make sure that that's there. But we've had some really good discussions. It's a bunch of hot takes. Anyway, thank you very much.
Sarah or Felix, any comments from you? It's a hard act to follow, I know. It's evangelist Jeremy here.
I'll dodge the tomatoes.
No, that was all fair points, Jeremy. I appreciate it. And maybe to emphasize a little bit on the positive points and to bring in the OEM perspective. And we got that question yesterday, why is BMW launching plug-in charge only in 2023? I think how the market developed here and also how other markets developing, and that's the challenge then for all global OEMs, is sometimes it's not the best to be the first. And that's what we were seeing here in the US. There are separate entities here. Steffen mentioned Hubject Live, the SAE is coming with their own PKI. I think there's reason for that, and it's all fine. There can be a third PKI, there can be a fourth PKI. I think a big benefit for that is that it will drive the costs down for every participant in the market, CPOs, OEMs, EMSPs. And that's why we decided to integrate up to 10 different contracts in our vehicles. with 5 different routes. I think we heard about that earlier. And I talked a lot with other OEMs yesterday. They're all following kind of the same approach here. So I would say from the OEM perspective, we are ready to support more than one PKI, and that's important for everybody in the market to ensure interoperability. And as Jeremy mentioned, interoperability and backwards compatibility is a very, very important topic. And we see that every day. I get cases of old i3s from 2013 on my desk saying, I can't charge with Electrify America, what's going on? Yes, we're still updating those softwares. Yes, these cars, they have to be supported. And yes, also these old i3s have to be compatible with a EVgo TLS station. I think this is a challenge, and I think that we're doing a good job here with Charin to face those challenges. And I also think that in the future, interoperability events, PKI interoperability becomes more important. So PKI 1 against PKI 2, are they interoperable? Do they work together? And then also, let's integrate the PKIs that we see in the market into those test events. We're factoring something, every other testicle together that is not really out there, whereas lots of the OEMs are already working with established solutions. But I think also, maybe coming back to yesterday, I also really liked yesterday, there was yelling and figuring out and PowerPoint slides and just putting points together. And I think maybe Sarah will say a few more words to that as well. But I think we came up with good short-term solutions on how the vehicle can select the right contract. We come up with a long-term the kind of solution also, how to tackle policy and governance models. I think that the right people, if you get the right people in the right place, it will work out, and there were lots of great people there, and we should not talk always about the problems and challenges. Yes, we have them, but we'll also achieve great things already, and I think with this working group managed by Charin on the PKI interoperability, we will see a lot of good progress. And that's it.
Thank you. Sarah?
Hello, my name is Sarah Hipel, just in case anyone was wondering how to say my last name. It's Hipel. It's nice to see you all. I'm really heartened to hear the comments about yesterday's session. So the session was pulled together prior. I am new to the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, came out of industry before that, and co-chaired the SAE's Public Key Infrastructure Core Working Group, so a bit of PKI background, and I've seen this problem of the multiple PKIs or the lack of integration or interoperability between them for quite some time. And so when Charin and the CEC helped to stand this event up, I slid my own agenda in there and suggesting that we have a, prior to being in the joint office, suggesting that we have a day zero event where we just lock everyone, all of the top experts in the world together on this issue in a room and come out with an answer, hopefully. And so I'm hoping that a model like this might be taken up now by industry. And somebody mentioned earlier prior to lunch that some of these things do feel like Groundhog's Day. I've been at multiple testables now and Volts, and we're talking about the same problems. I was recently at a panel in DC, and I heard a woman talking about DEI efforts, and she said, it's no longer time to disposition or characterize the problems. Now we need to roll up our sleeves, write something down on a piece of paper that you think is a solution, bring it to a room and hash it out. Come up with something, right? And that's where we're at. So rather than reestablishing the problems over and over and over, it's time to really come with solutions. So the event yesterday, and all ideas are good. You know, like there's a multitude, there's often many right ways to do things. We just need to coalesce. You all need to coalesce together on one of them. So yesterday was a little different because it was solution first. We all know the problem. Here's what we think a possible solution is. Let's debate it. Let's talk about how they layer on to one another, how they can become a roadmap, how they can spiral into a working group and have strict governance on it. So I'm really trying to encourage you all to do that, because one of the things I did yesterday, now with my joint office hat on, is I'm giving you the mission. I come from team sports. I'm giving you the mission. This is your goal, is to have a solution. It can be tactical, like what we talked about yesterday. It can be an SDP client. It can be value-added services. It can be whatever. It can be tactical. And then we need to have strategic, which I erroneously called strategical at one point. We need to have a strategic solution that is a policy authority. What's your policy? How's your management authority look like? How does this all work from governance? But the first part is tactically, because drivers are about, and I have given the mission that I would like to see one of the possible solutions presented yesterday, tested at Testival in September. I would like to see that, expect to see that. Because drivers are out there now. They're going out now. 1.5 billion in NEVI funding has already gone to states who are putting together RFPs, who are getting their grant packages together. We're going to be selecting suppliers. This is not a 2024 problem. It's not a 2024 and a half. It is now. And we know, the folks in this room, it's good for all of us. Everyone in this room agrees that we want to see more electric vehicles sold and that we want to electrify transportation, whether that's private vehicles. These solutions that we're discussing right now, no more problems. We're discussing solutions now. These solutions that we're discussing will be applicable to public transportation. They'll be applicable to medium and heavy duty transportation. So these are foundational solutions that we're coming up with, and we need to get them out there in the market right this minute, because as soon as a driver rolls up and gets the TLS loop of doom, if you don't know what that is, it's once you've selected to use TLS, you can't unselect, so the driver's just going to unplug and replug and unplug and replug, and they're never going to be able to charge. Once that happens and it makes the news and it's all over the place a bunch of times, that's not going to be great for the adoption of electrification. So there's an immediacy to work on these solutions, to demonstrate the capabilities at events like this, and at Testival in September, a demonstration of multiple PKIs. And then we can continue to work together, and we'll say, do we need a certified trust list? Do we need to replicate the European model of having a nonpartisan body set up a certified trust list? Or can you use pools? Can you use cross-recognition or cross-certification? We've been debating these topics for years at this point. So tactical now, come up with longer-term policy solutions as we go, as they develop, and let us know, let the Joint Office, let the governmental bodies, the CEC, know ways that we can support you. If you see major gaps in the market where you're like, this is not going to work without a certified trust list, message me, talk to me, let's figure it out. Whatever it is, we're going to find yeses. No more deal breakers, right? We're going to get to yes. So let us know what you need, and we'll try to figure out how to leverage the power of the national labs, how to leverage the funding opportunities we have to unlock the yes, to get our drivers to charge the first time, every time.
Thank you, Sarah. So for those of you who were not there at the workshop, you missed a great show. But so next time there is a call to join, I'm sure you will, make every effort to attend. So anyways, no one got hurt. Thank you. Yeah, it was all good. So at workshop yesterday, this is a question to the panelists, right? So we talked about market rules and governance that's required to have the open PKI, ensuring freedom of choice for everybody. And so what entity do you think is best suited, and we discussed this, but I think we want to discuss it for the rest of the team here, what entity is best suited to set up such a governance model? Should it be an individual company? Should it be an industry trade association? A company set up for profit that does this, or somebody else? So I guess I'll take a quick poll, and maybe Jeremy, you can just go down and give us your quick opinion. 30 seconds.
You basically buy out Hubject and you run it as a nonprofit, and that's your PKI for North America. I know, sorry.
I would support that.
Well, there you go.
Good. Yeah, so we set up one because there was nothing, right? So we needed to have something. I'm happy if there, like in Europe, we have now the STFs, the Sustainable Transport from the European Union. They are setting up routes, and we're happy to follow them, and we are also part of it to define the rules and governance. We need this. I want to have guidelines. Until now, we did it on our own best practices from the market. And for the yes, we need this as well. We know SAE is publishing soon their rules and regulations. If this needs to be now then on a higher level, happy to have this on US level. It needs to be something neutral. Obviously, the word neutral is taken everywhere, but it needs to be someone who is not involved in the commercial part to define the rules. Michael?
Yeah, maybe I rephrase that a bit. We can make our world very easy if we have someone who knows everything and is making this one entity doing all the stuff for everyone here. Easy. But why we are here is we all want to make business. And we all want to interact with the different solutions we have, go in competition, and have a fair and open market. And this is a pain in the ass to do that, because we have a line on common standards. We have a line on common set of governance and rules to be able to have this open and fair market. Yeah? And I will not say that Tesla has the best solution. They have a solution for a closed shop solution. Yeah? That's always easy to make, but no one from us can go into this market and say, okay, we are participating on that. We want to have an open market, we want to have fair competition, and therefore we have to make a secure solution which is able to interoperable with different companies, different business cases. And that's our task. And the task is getting more urgently, I know, but there are solutions out there. There's existing levels of learning what we had, yeah? Lessons learned, we have a lot of them. Let's use them, let's take them, go into interaction, go into discussion, maybe have again a very loud workshop, I don't care, but we have to do this process in a positive, common sense, and then we have a solution where all of our companies and all of us having a good solution for our businesses and have the best solution for the customer. That's what I think we all had to take care of.
I agree with that. I would add whoever can do the job best should do the job, kind of. And I would also add on to Steffen's comment how the European market is solving it with the European Commission. We see that this is a very successful model. They get support from companies that technically know what they're talking about. And now with Thera in the joint office,
no pressure.
No pressure. And we also have somebody there that knows. So that the joint office might be a good place to define these rules.
My response would be that you tell me. You know, it's not for me as the joint office to describe technology or give imperatives on what you need to do, but I would like to set some first principle design rules. I would like to impart some of those on you, which is that we have lessons to learn from other geographies. We also need to design for the United States. We are, if you are in the market for federally funded chargers, you have to look at the drivers in this geography. And we just can't take solutions wholesale from other geographies and apply them here. We have to look and say OEMs may be doing it different. They might not have PCIDs. They might not install things to the charge post. Whatever the differences are, there's a lot that can be crossed over from other geographies, but it's not a Venn diagram that's actually a circle. Like, it is going to be different implementations here, so we need to have first principle designs for what the drivers in this geography need, while also looking at and saying, okay, you can't compel OEMs or EBSE manufacturers to do totally different implementations, right? So we need to work together across the geographies to figure it out, but we do need to remember that there are some specifics and nuances for North America. So when you're designing, please keep that in mind. However, if you look at the STF, or the Sustainable Transport Forum that's in Europe that's being referenced, and say, that's it, that's what we need, or we need pools, which we don't really use in the United States heavily yet, then great, do that, right? But do it from the lens of driver to supplier, manufacturer, to then the solution, not the other direction.
Thank you. One more question, and then I'll open it up for the audience to perhaps ask questions. There's also, if you go on the app itself, and if you select the middle icon there, you should be able to ask questions that are, you can or make some comments to the question that is being asked in there, and we'll review that here shortly. So back to the panelists. So when we talk about several routes and recognizing cross-certification and such, we talked about cross-recognition, cross-certification, certificates trust list. They all have different levels of difficulty to implement. Which one would you say is most preferred at this point in time as a near-term solution? As Sarah was alluding to, we need to get something out there quickly. So is there a solution that with that? Yeah, go ahead.
I think the easiest one for now is just make sure that the Hubject root cert is freely available. You can download it. So at least having that on the automaker side is free. And that way you don't fail TLS. The main thing is you really don't want to fail TLS because you get into the problems Sarah mentioned. So I think that's kind of the easiest to do. If you want to do, if we have other PKIs and stuff, as a CPO, my intention is not to limit that on that front, and we will have multiple leaf certs eventually if the market requires it. So, but at least at the end of the day, right now, our name is on the Hubject slides now, so we will have the leaf cert on our chargers, and I think that it seems like that's common, at least in the U.S. market. So having that root cert at least allows you to do TLS without an issue. So.
Maybe you can add, cross-recognition is kind of a natural process, right? So you acknowledge the routes which are available. A CTL just supports this, that you can just download from one piece, like the list of trusted things by a certain rule set. So 1 and 3 are actually together, and the cross-signing is something which we can do in -20, but it's also not a normal thing. Cross-recognition will be in -20 also normal. And if there's a need that 1 and B need to be cross-signed, yeah, then they can cross-sign, but -20.
Yeah, but I think -20, like in the field here, is out quite some time. That's why I would say, from an OEM perspective, I just hope that there are not more than 5 V2G routes. And I think I speak for all other OEMs as well. But yeah, we support all of them, and for us, that wouldn't be a big problem.
The only request that I think I have is whatever solution you do decide, whether it's cross-recognition, CTL, cross-signing, is that please keep reliability in mind. I've pushed speed to market, which absolutely I cannot emphasize enough that at Testival, I expect to see this tested, please. But also in the long term, having X to N number of cross certifications may have some reliability. There's an amount of reliability risk that's going to be entered with each kind of solution. So whatever solution you all as industry come together to evaluate, please just keep the calculation of what the reliability risk is for the complexity of the solution.
And can I add one more point to that?
Please go ahead.
We were talking about failures and failure analytics and diagnostics earlier. I think this is a very, very important topic, and we should always keep that in mind with the number of PKIs we're going to have, and also with the introduction of plug and charge itself at more and more networks out here in the United States. Also, the level of failures and of more complex failure structures that we will see out in the field will increase. And we all, OEMs, CPOs, we then have to deal with that, with those complaints, with the troubleshooting, etc. And I also would love to see that kind of failure handling and joint failure reporting, CPOs and OEMs for plug and charge in a joint effort here.
Yeah, a lot of things already said. Just cross-recognition, I think that's one of the short-term solutions because it's one-on-one. Relatively easy to do, but as a market is growing, it's more difficult. So then we have to talk about different solutions like CTL, but then we need also entity for managing that. But no matter what solution has at the end the got to the field or will be done over the time, it's very important, like I've showed before from the lessons learned, that we all agree on common market guidelines, and common CPs and common governance, because that's the base for interoperability and also for able to make a fair and a quick solution bring on in the field.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I'm looking at, do we have any questions? Okay, Christoph, if you can read those out, that'd be great.
Yeah, so we have 2 upvoted questions here from the audience online. First question is, can we please have a PKI workshop part 2, Wednesday, tomorrow morning, to continue the discussion while everyone is still here?
That's a great question. Yes, who's supporting the festival then? No, but that's a good thing. I think you're right. We need to have that sense of urgency to get together so we can actually, further drill down to the solutions that we talked about. I think we'll take it back to the Charin team and figure out how to make that happen as quickly as possible. I can't say tomorrow, but hopefully we can connect this week. Yeah.
Maybe we will have also cars available tomorrow on the testing where we can show plug and charge running, also with different contracts, how to install multiple. So we can maybe show that a lot of the things we are discussing is already available. We need to make sure that we maintain the interop for the future. And this can be done at the car, in the car, next to the car, right?
Go ahead.
There's another question, more technical one. Are there solutions to break the TLS loop and fall back to a non-PNC session? So if TLS fails, is there a fallback solution?
Not a standard fallback, but there are ways to do seamless retry.
I mean, that's really the problem, right? Is that there's not. Now, if you have TLS set as priority 1, that's what you're going to be doing. So this is another point of, I'm trying to, coming into the joint office, to expand the definition of reliability a little bit to include cybersecurity, cyber-physical security, and interoperability. And a big one of those for reliability now, interop, is how to fail back between the standards, because it's not defined. There is really no clean way to do it. And you might figure it out as an OEM or an EVSE manufacturer, something like that, but there's no consistent way, and you're really not sure that it's going to work. Like, if you mix and match, there's no guaranteed way it's going to work. You could just end up without being able to charge a no-charge event.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions from the floor that were not entered? If you are wanting to ask a question, please raise your hand. So it's all very clear to you guys. That's excellent.
We have more online, but
okay,
are
go
there
ahead.
questions from the audience here? No? Okay, check.
Mike?
Got one in the front here.
Mike would like.
There we go.
Hi. Yeah. I would be mainly interested, maybe Sarah, if you could explain what are the particular differences in the US market compared to the European market that requires that we need a different PKI or a different root CA, whether it's SAE or some other body. Why can we not reuse one PKI? For example, from Hubcheck, there was the idea of, maybe Hubcheck is not considered neutral enough, then make it, buy it out or make a different body out of it. Why do we need specifically a different PKI? That is something I haven't fully understood yet.
Yeah, I don't think it's a need for a different PKI. It's just to understand that OEMs and EVSE manufacturers do things a little different. Like they might not have a baked-in PCID because they're not pulling contract certificates from a charge post. That's a huge difference right there. So what does that look like? How do you broker the connections? Do you rethink pooling or hubbing based on the way that the suppliers in this geography are manufacturing? I don't know what the answer is. Like, my only request is that you consider that. And you consider that not as, you know how we always say that you don't bolt cybersecurity on afterwards? That's kind of the question here too, right? Is when you look at your use cases, you look at your user experience of the driver as well as the suppliers and say, like, I need to understand how they're doing it in this geography and then build solutions around that.
And maybe to add to that, and I pointed that out earlier, if we have competition, certificate prices will go down for every player, and that will scale. And that's why I think it is a good solution, and competition always fosters better solution.
I'm fine with both. Literally, like it's good to have competition, but I also see the technical kind of weakness in having too many. You also say like, too many is also not good. So find the balance. So because we are early in the industry. Maybe in 5 years we are laughing about 800 bytes. There's 1 megabyte in the car. Yeah, okay, done, right? No, we will not talk about it anymore. But car developments are long, 2 to 4 to 5 years, depending when you're starting. So we will see. So, but as we as subject, we would be open for both ways. Fine.
No.
Christoph, one last question.
One last question from the audience online. When people ask my opinion about any EV, I tell them you can buy the car you want or you can buy access to the Tesla network and get a car to use it on. My question is, does the NACS have any future beyond Tesla?
I don't think so.
No, we all support open standards.
I also think that it's not necessarily just the connector. I mean, that is one facet of it. It's a nicer connector, but that's not it. That's not the whole thing. It's the reliability problems we see are very multifaceted. So the connector itself could solve maybe one of those problems, which is the bulkiness of the CCS1 connector, but there's many other problems that we have that's just unrelated to NACS. So,
Noel?
Question for the entire group. I'm wondering if we can take it back to like the start of the conversation where there were illustrations of how PKIs are implemented across various different industries, enabling innovation and business models. What are folks' visions for how this very esoteric technical challenge can open up markets for EVs, not in 2032, but 2040? What would a future charging ecosystem, if we're successful on this, look like?
So if we get this running interoperability, we saw what the Dash 20 will do. We want to have bidirectional charging. We want to have a reliable system and so on. So with plug-in charge and with securing it with PKI, first we ensure that you're not locked in anything. You can choose a contract in the car so that we have an open market that no one can complain I'm locked into one solution. On the other side, we enable new use cases like bidirectional charging. How do I get money back from the grid to my contract? Or how do I do valet parking that I don't have to give the credit card that the guy can charge my car. The car's handling it on their own and you get money back? Or
10 seconds.
Go ahead.
What was the question? The vision. Okay, yeah, okay, that's easy. Okay, so then what I would envision and what we're working on already is you can plug in your BMW, your Ford, your Mercedes with every charging station and it just charges and bills you on the corresponding contract. Therefore, I think a big role in that game play the EMSPs that must enable roaming, for example, for plug-in charge as well. And in an ideal scenario, I work with EMSP1, EMSP2, and EMSP3 maybe. I have 3 contracts in my vehicle that I install once, and that's it. And then all the stuff, all the billing, all the contract selection that is just done automatically. And we will have exactly the comment that we heard at the first panel, where one customer said, I'll just use my Tesla, because it does exactly that.
And I think at that we'll probably have to leave it because we're out of time. And I want to thank our really exciting panelists for their enthusiasm and for the passion that they brought in the conversation. So would you kindly give it up for the great panel here? Erica, back to you.